So hi everyone. So thank you very much for coming tonight for our discussion on general epistemology and on the more cybernetic dimension, uh, compare with the higher Platonic dimension of the timeless form. Before I open the discussion, I would like to take maybe about 10 minutes to take a segue to complete something completely different, but still in the Platonic tradition. Okay, we devoted about 8 to 10 sessions in the past for the reading of the Harmonici Mundi by Johannes Kepler, a philosopher and a physicist, astronomer, mathematician in the Platonic tradition. Well, today, as a introduction to our discussion on general epistemology, I would like to discuss a school of psychology of the 20th century called the Gestalt psychology. Okay, but first, I would like to make a disclaimer. Gestalt psychology, Gestant, a German word meaning form, is not exactly the same or even not at all compared to Gestalt therapy. Okay, so I would like to finish the notion of Gestalt therapy in 30 seconds. Gestalt therapy has been invented in the 20th century by Laura Burns and Fritz Bern, and even they consider that the Gestalt therapy doesn't have anything to do with Gestalt psychology. Okay, so this disclaimer been made. Let's go to Gestalt psychology or configurationism. First, that Gestalt psychology has been the work of three German, uh, which are Max Wertheimer, born in 1880 and died in 1943. After that, you have Wolfgang Kohler, K-O with the umlaut, the diaresis on the O, H-A-D-R, born in 1887 and died in 1967. And Kurt Koffka, K-O-F-F-K-A, born in 1885 and died in 1941. And why do I want to talk about Gestalt theory as a something in the Platonic tradition and within a discussion on epistemology concerning the lower cybernetic dimension and the upper Platonic considerations? Okay, so I would like to remind once again the basic framework. For Plato, you have doxa, meaning opinion and having sense of perception at the first level. The second level, the intellect, meaning using words, concept, and images. And at the third level, the psyche, which is the consensus of the experts of your society. Okay, for those who have been present at the Theaetetus reading sessions, I think that you remember some stuff. That's doxa, opinion. That's all using the Chinese expression, the lower trigram. And you have episteme, knowledge, having expressing the three timeless forms of the first order: beauty, goodness, and truth. Okay, beauty at the, if I may say so, at the fourth line, goodness at the fifth line, and truth at the sixth line. So that's the interactions between the lower trigram and the upper trigram, or the time dimension, or the timeless reality, or opinion and knowledge, according to Plato, doxa, and episteme. The higher classical teaching or the timeless teaching will train you in the lower trigram, but will also open the higher epistemological perspective of the upper trigram or of episteme. Okay, hence epistemological development, as I said. Then, why do I want to speak about form psychology or Gestalt psychology today. Because let's not forget that when Gestalt psychology was born in the beginning of the 20th century, the dominant psychological school was called the structuralist school, okay, the school of the structure. And you would not be very surprised to know that that structuralist school has been very, very influenced by British empiricism, meaning a school of philosophy and of psychology very rooted in sensus perceptions, right? Sense of perception being the lowest level of the sixth level of epistemological development, if we remember our discussion about the theetists. So the basic, let's first talk a little bit about the structuralist school. The basic principles were created by Wilhelm Wundt, the W-U-N-D-T, born in 1832 and died in 1920, and Edward Titchener, T-I-C-H-N-E-R, born in 1867 and died in 1927. That structuralist psychology was firmly rooted in British empiricism, as I said, and constructed on three concepts from the idea of bottom up, okay, meaning atomism or elementalism, which is the view that knowledge, even complex abstract ideas, is built from simple elementary constituent. Sensationalism, which is the second principle of that school, is the view that the simplest constituents, the atoms of thoughts, are elementary sense perceptions, precisely, sense impressions, right? The first layer of the epistemological journey. And finally, associationism, meaning the view that more complex ideas arise from the association of simpler ideas associated closely in space and time. And that is precisely the kind of idea that are not necessarily not necessarily the only foundation of cybernetics, but constitute one of the foundation of cybernetics, meaning, as I wrote in the invitation, the control of mechanical system or electromechanical system or electrobiological system. Okay, if you remember the title I suggested for our discussion, philosophy, is it food for the living soul or algorithmic matrix for biomachines? Okay, so we have those two possibilities. But let's not forget that even in the higher Platonic tradition, we are also a biological machine, but a special biological machine that is not restricted to the level of the biological machine, but which is capable to rise above that machine dimension that Plato called doxa, and the higher forms of beauty, goodness, and truth above the doxa, which is called episteme. Once again, I repeat, hence epistemological development. I think that I will devote the next 10 minutes to talk a little bit about the three founders of the Gestalt psychology, okay? And after that, I will open the discussion, and we will go as we want, depending on the whims and on the major topics that we want to discuss. First, I want to talk about Max Wertheimer. Okay, Wertheimer is written W-E-R-T-H-E-I-M-E-R, and I remind that he was born in 1880 and he died in 1943. He was a student of Christian von Ehrenfels. Ehrenfels is written E-H-R-E-N-F-E-L-S, and he was born in 1859 and he died in 1932. And he was himself from the school of Franz Brentano. And Franz Brentano was an important philosopher, Austrian philosopher of the 19th century, who focused on the notion of intentionality, okay? Because intentionality is probably one of the major concepts for the upper trigram or of episteme, meaning that we have ideas, that we have form, that we have intentions to do something and not being the result of mechanical calculations. And that concept of intentionality has been, if you want, combined with the concept of Gestalt in philosophy and psychology, first by that Christian von Ehrenfels, student of Franz Brentano and teacher of Max Wertheimer. So you have Brentano, Ehrenfels, and Wertheimer. For those three men, in addition to the sensory elements of perception, there's something extra. And that something extra is the Gestalt qualitat, okay? Gestalt qualitat, or form quality, because as eidos in Greek, E-I-D-O-S means form, Gestalt, G-E-S-T-A-N-T in German also means form. So Gestalt qualitat, that is something extra and in direct line with the Platonic philosophy and tradition, that they are timeless forms, the ideas, the eidos, at the base, at the foundation of phenomenal reality. Okay, so we have phenomenal reality or doxa, and ideal reality or absolute reality, the realm of the forms, of the timeless forms. In 1912 begins Gestalt psychology, because that year Max Wertheimer will publish something about phenomenal motion that he would call phi, according to the Greek letter phi, using alternating bars of light, that he would prove that you don't need truly moving bars of light to create the impression of movement, because there is precisely that extra Gestalt qualitat that will structure your perception of phenomenal reality precisely. For Wertheimer, Gestalt has been studied primarily as perceptual reality. The other thing that, the other example that he will give, and which for me is quite compelling, is that one hears in music the whole melody first and not the notes one by one. Okay, when you hear, for example, the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, you will hear the whole melody first, and after you will analyze note by note. Okay, it's not note by note, and after you go to the perception of the whole melody. I think that is the most obvious example, which shows that there is a Gestalt qualitat, a form quality, which gives the fundamental framework to our perception of phenomenal reality, and not element by element, as suggested wrongly by the structuralist psychological school. I want to mention too that Wertheimer died in 1943, but he had the time to finish a book on mathematical problem solving, and with the title Productive Thinking. And it has been published posthumously in 1945. And I think that it could be a very interesting book that we can read in the future, if it can be used and studied. Now I want to say some words about Wolfgang Köhler. Köhler is K-O diaresis H-L-E-R, born in 1887 and died in 1967. He was an expert in physical acoustics, studied under Max Planck. Max Planck was born in 1858 and he died in 1947. And Wolfgang Köhler had taken his degree in psychology under Carl Stumpf, and he studied during 4 years chimpanzees, and he proved that chimpanzees can have sudden insights into the structure of the problem, an eureka moment or an aha moment. Okay, and the example was precisely to put bananas on a high place, and to put the many empty boxes beside the chimpanzees. And The chimpanzee at a certain moment will have an aha moment that will allow them to stack the boxes one upon the other in order to get to the bananas. Okay, and we can well, Color saw that the chimpanzee would play with the boxes, and that aha moment would come suddenly, and they would stack the boxes in order to create a kind of ladder to get to the bananas. So the insight happens too in animals and not only in human. And that is the eureka moment, or the aha moment is a demonstration that there's something above the associative and incremental manner of learning that Ivan Pavlov, okay, and Edward Lee Thorndike had demonstrated with dogs and cats, respectively. Maybe not all of you know Edward Lee Thorndike, but I think that most of you know Ivan Pavlov, okay, the guy with the dog that would demonstrate the association between the bell and the salivating of the dogs, because it has been associated, the sounds has been associated with the presentation of a meal. Okay, so that is precisely the associative and incremental manner of learning, which pertains to the lower trigram or to doxa. And what Wolfgang Kohler proved with the chimpanzees, that there is something related to insights and above precisely that associative and incremental manner of learning. And finally, I will talk about Kurt Kafka, Koffka, born in 1885 and died in 1941. In 1921, Kafka published a Gestalt-oriented text on developmental psychology, Growth of the Mind. I think that maybe that we wouldn't study maybe that text in the future too, because it's very interesting. Growth of the Mind. In 1922, with the help of Robert Morris Ogden, okay, Ogden, I don't know if I pronounce his name correctly. Ogden was an American psychologist. He was born in 1877 and died in 1959. So with the help of that Ogden, Kafka introduced Gestalt psychology to the US by way of a paper in Psychological Bulletin, and Psychological Bulletin still exists nowadays. Kafka moved to the US in 1924 and founded the Smith College in 1927. In 1935, Kafka published his Principles of Gestalt Psychology. This textbook laid out the Gestalt vision of the scientific enterprise as a whole. And here I think it's interesting for us who study the Platonic tradition and the different manifestation of the Platonic traditions, okay? Because what we once again, we devoted 8 sessions to study Kepler, and Kepler is a magnificent example of the Platonic tradition. So in that Gestalt vision of scientific enterprise, Kafka will talk about the fact that science is not a simple accumulation of facts, that there's an ordering of reality into a theoretical structure, and that theoretical structure is related to the timeless forms precisely and once again, the 3 timeless forms of the first order are beauty, goodness, and truth. And finally, the goal of the Gestaltists was to integrate the facts of inanimate nature, life, and mind into a single scientific structure, quantity, and meaning. Okay, you remember that when we discussed Kepler, we were talking about knowability and congruence, okay? Or if you want, quality and quantity, okay? So there's nothing wrong with quantity, but quantity has to be supervised or ordered, if you want, by quality, the timeless form of beauty, goodness, and truth. So here we have the same thing with the Gestalt psychology, because the integration of the facts of inanimate nature, life, and mind into a single scientific structure has precisely the 2 group or the 2 blocks of quantity and meaning, or value and order. Okay, that's the name of Kafka for quality, which related exactly to the quality and quantity, or once again, knowability and congruence by Kepler. Or once again, episteme and doxa by Plato, or upper trigram and lower trigram by the Chinese Confucianist tradition. So I would like also to remind, I'm sorry, the triune structure of epistemology, the theory of knowledge, okay, meaning that knowledge, what we mean by theory of knowledge in this specific context, okay? By theory of knowledge, what we mean is that there is a reception of quantity by measurement, once again, the lower trigram, but there is also the structuration or the structuring or the framework given by the higher dimension, by the timeless forms of beauty, goodness, and truth. That is what Plato means by theory of knowledge. Let's not forget that theory comes from the Greek word theoria, meaning contemplation. And the second element of epistemology is hermeneutics, okay? Hermeneutics, hermeneutics, meaning the capacity to give meaning to a measurement, to a quantity, and heuristic, Heuristics, which is the different ways to discover and to invent. If you remember, when in the Kepler sessions we try to find how to prove the Pythagoras theorem, and that we know that there are at least 365 or even more versions of the proof of for the theorem of Pythagoras. That is precisely heuristics, okay? The different ways to reach to the same proof of the same thing. And that is the triune structure of epistemology: theory of knowledge, hermeneutics, and heuristics. So for the Gestaltist, the psychological whole has priority, and the psychological whole is precisely given by the quality dimension, or the Gestalt qualitat, to use their name, okay? So if I have to say doxa and episteme for Plato, for the Gestaltist, it would be quantity and Gestalt qualitat, which is the Gestalt qualitat would be the equivalent of Plato's episteme, having beauty, goodness, and truth. So for them, the psychological whole has priority, and the parts are defined by the structure of the whole, not vice versa. And Gestalt theories of perception are based on human nature being inclined to understand objects as an entire structure rather than the sum of its part. And precisely that mentality, or that proclivity to understand reality as an entire structure, which the framework is given by the structuring forms of beauty, goodness, and truth, is the core of the Platonic tradition, rather than the sum of its part, which is the drifting away of the Platonic tradition as embodied by the representatives of the Cybernetics school, among other things, okay? And I want to stop here for my speech, and I want to open the discussion. If in the near future I have to add things, I will take 5 to 10 minutes. If not, we can have an open discussion till the end. So we have 90 minutes in front of us. Let's go.
Okay, so I'll start. So with that last thing you just said, it reminds me of doctoring, because years ago, I was told that, a doctor, treated, all parts of the body. And now, I mean, obviously everything is specialized. The body's broken up into just parts instead of like the whole thing. And I think personally that when it comes to health and people have problems, it's a whole body thing. You know what I'm saying? It's not just well, let's just look at this one thing. And then, I feel like you can't really come to a resolution. And so that's all I had to say.
Couldn't agree with you more, Helene.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I've always had a preference for Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese acupuncture because, and even not that I've used it a lot, but it's an alternative therapy, and I just can't think of the
Homeopathy?
yeah, homeopathy. I had a homeopathic consultation one time, and even I was surprised at the degree in which the practitioner wanted to know about the total me. Not just, whatever the minor problem was. I've never had big problems, so it was a minor problem, and I forget what I was consulting her for. But the degree to which she was interested in every aspect of me, including psychology, not really in depth, but taking that whole person approach rather than the typical Western approach is, you've got a symptom, let's give you a drug to treat the symptom. We're not interested in the whole. We don't really care what the symptom actually represents, what the causes are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So couldn't agree with you more. I would make a similar comment about music too. And this is just my personal story, I suppose, studying music. Why did I do it in the first place? Well, number one, because I had a love of music. And because at a certain point, an opportunity, university was free, came up, and I decided that I really did want to explore this. I'd started learning to play the drums, and I figured if I'm going to do it, I have to take it seriously. Now, when you talk about love of music, I mean, Quan was saying before, when you hear a melody, you don't hear the individual notes necessarily, you hear the melody. And the same thing with, the study of music that I did, when you pull it all apart, when you do an analysis of, why does this interval cause this sort of a reaction in the context of the music or whatever, yeah, it gives you a much greater understanding of the complexity of compositions. But ultimately, for me, it was always that, when a melody touched the heart, let's say, Beethoven's Ninth, a good one, Beethoven's Fifth, an even better one, and touches the heart in a dramatic way, I know, but you don't stop to think about the analysis, even with a degree in music. When you're listening to it, you're appreciating the whole, which includes the melody in its harmonic context, its rhythmic context, all of those things. You're kind of, not because you've had the training, not because I did the degree or anything like that. I don't think that I had better emotional insights, for example, in my responses to music after I finished my degree. It was that effect that music had that brought you there in the first place, that made me want to learn more and understand more of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I would put that in exactly the same vein as what Helene was saying in terms of medicine.
Yes, I think that the musical metaphor is perfect because, as you will see after our discussion tonight, I will send to the the Kepler Telegram group a marvelous video about 90 minutes on music and philosophy. And I would, if you have time, please watch it because it would be the foundation of our discussion for next time. And it would have to do with what we will discuss today too, of course. If you guys want me to discuss about cybernetics, I can do it, but I prefer more to focus on classical philosophy. I don't know, what do you prefer?
Yeah, both work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First,
me too.
yeah,
I've been thinking about how their logarithms and stuff work, and like how does that where are the gaps, where's the information loss, or where's the ignorance in a lot of the their the mathematical formulas to control people and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that first, my love of etymology, right?
Yeah.
So cybernetics is from a Greek word, cybernetikos. Is someone willing to guess what does it mean?
Steering, I think.
Yes.
Steering?
Yes, steering. Yes.
Wow.
Or the helmsman. Okay, the helmsman.
Helmsman, that's right, yes.
Or steering. Exactly. It's exactly that meaning. Okay. And as I wrote in the presentation, cybernetics is the study of control. Okay, it's the study of control of electromechanical and electrobiological systems, and it has always been the fantasy of a certain group of people to have robots. Okay, and but they don't limit their ambitions to mechanical robots. They want to have biological robots too. And the way to have biological robots precisely is to limit the human beings to the lower trigram or to doxa, okay, meaning to senses perception, to the intellect, and to the psyche, okay. Even to the psyche is already dangerous for them. Uh, and yes, Susan, I will send it to you by email after. Uh, even to send uh, even to allow people to go to the third level. Okay, so I would like to remind our discussion during the theaetetus. Okay, so one is the senses perception, two is the intellect, three is the psyche, but it's also called the heart mind. Okay, so the psyche or the heart mind is the inchoate soul. Okay, so for people wanting to have biological robots, it would be already a little bit dangerous for people to get access to the third level, which is the heart, because it's from the heart that you will receive the emanations, if you want, from the higher forms of beauty, which is the fourth line, of goodness, which is the fifth line, and of truth, which is the sixth line. Okay, that is the more structure classification of the epistemological journey, if you want. Once again, there's no need to be obsessed by the words, but the words are useful to have some representation of the things that we discuss. Yes, Helen.
So I thought when we were talking about the Theaetetus that number 3 was intellect of a society, like the community consensus of the experts. So when you're saying this heart and you're saying number 3, maybe I'm confusing it.
No, you're not confusing it because you understood perfectly. The number 3 is the consensus of the experts of your society on the collective level, but on the individual level, let's not forget that the so-called expert of the society, they are recognized as expert because they have something more which allows them to impress the other people. Okay, and that's
Control.
yes, and that something more is precisely uh, the heart. Okay, those people are not completely mechanical. They have something. Okay, if you listen to Bertrand Russell, if you listen to Sir Roger Scruton, they have something that would impress you. And that something is that they are capable to be open to the higher forms of beauty, goodness, and truth sometimes. And the key word is that sometimes. Okay? So as if they have received a drop of the divine kingdom, and because of that drop of the divine kingdom that they receive sometimes, they would have an edge over the average people on the society. So you're perfectly right, Helen. It means the consensus, the intellectual consensus of the experts of your society, but it also means at the individual level, the person having sometimes an access to the higher kingdom, but not long enough to be good.
So it's like a tease or something, or a trick?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you know the expression or the adage saying that a little bit of knowledge it's sometimes more dangerous than no knowledge at all. Okay, so those people having an opening sometimes to the higher realms, but not having goodness to allow the other to go to the higher realms, ultimately they are more dangerous than completely ignorant people.
That was good, clear.
Yeah.
And well, that's the level of of the advisors of the Plutocrats, okay, because I never forgot the political dimensions, okay. I think here it's a good moment to make the rapprochement between the epistemological development and the political dimension, okay, because let's not forget that the core of Plato's Republic is that he said that at each level of epistemological development corresponds a certain type of political person. Okay, so if you go to the epistemological development of one, meaning the sense of perception, the people at the sense perception would be motivated by sense of perception, of course, of enjoying the senses, and there's a word for enjoying the senses, hedonism, of a lex talionis, okay, lex talionis meaning revenge, okay, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, and of tribal affinities, okay, so they would not be capable to rise above their tribal group, okay, they wouldn't fight for the tribal group, but against the other tribal groups. And Plato has a name for that. He called that kind of people, politically speaking, the democratic man, okay? And and it's not an offense from me to democracy, because you have to understand that at the time of Plato, the word demos didn't mean the people in the noble sense of the word, okay? The word demos at the time of Plato means the mob, the rabble, okay? So it doesn't mean democracy as we understand democracy nowadays in the 21st century, in the ideal republic, of course, because we don't have the ideal republic nowadays, of course. So you have to understand demos as the mob. So that's the democratic man corresponding to the first level of epistemological development. The second level of epistemological development is the intellect, okay? People capable to use words, concept, images, okay, to convince themselves and to convince others. And Plato calls those people, they are more organized in their mind, okay, compared to the democratic man. So they are more capable to accumulate wealth. They are more capable to be in group, to be efficient in their endeavors. And they are, do you want to say something, Nathan?
Oh, sure. And then you mentioned also that these levels of doxa relate also to first age, developmental stages of like child, teenager, adult, or young adult. Is that true? Because I found like I have issues with some of those stages.
Well, for Plato,
but I know I'm not, a hedonist.
For Plato,
so
and for,
it must be trauma in childhood or something.
Yeah, but for Plato and for Confucius, it's about the development of grown-up people. Okay.
Okay. Gotcha.
Because
okay.
For Confucius, for example, the first level corresponds to the symbolic age of 15, 1-5.
Okay.
Okay. Because let's not forget that in antiquity, a person is grown up at 15, okay, not at 18. Okay, so people were perceived as adult by the society at a younger age. Okay, so 15 at the time of Confucius is like 18 or 20 nowadays. Okay, so it's about the classification of grown-up people and not the education of children.
Okay.
Okay, so and once again, it's a symbolic age. Okay, so someone can be symbolically 15 years old for all his life, meaning that that person can stay a democratic man all his life, and he would not be higher in his epistemological development. So the ages given by Confucius are symbolic. Let's say that ideally, okay, a person should go ahead his epistemological development and be at 15 at 1 and at 30 at 2, and at 45 at 3, at 40 at 3. Okay, those are the symbolic ages by Confucius. So rather than saying the democratic man, Confucius would say at 15 years old. And at the second stage of development called the intellect, Plato would call those people motivated by profits and power and wealth, the plutocratic man. Okay, and the plutocratic man is given the symbolic age of 30 by Confucius, 30. And at the stage of psyche of the heart, Confucius would give the symbolic age of 40, and Plato would call these people the fake democratic man, Timocratic. Timos come from honor. Okay, so the people who would be motivated by honor and justice. But at the number 3, as I said, those people only have sometimes access to the higher kingdom. Okay, so they are not true democratic man, they are fake democratic man. And as I said the 15 minutes earlier, they are the advisors of the plutocrats. Okay, because they are in general brighter in terms of intellect than the plutocrats. And they would give, if I want to make an easy comparison, okay, the plutocrats would be the billionaire and the people having power, and the fake democratic man would be the advisors in the think tanks, for example, like Henry Kissinger or like Zbigniew Brzezinski, if I may be so bold to name some persons.
And you know, one reason why they could be number 3 is because they're good communicators, because good communication.
Yes, but let's not forget that they also receive from time to time the light from the higher kingdom. That is the power that they have.
It's hard to imagine it, but I mean, yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yes.
Little bit of truth in there, huh?
You know, I would give a laughable example, okay? As if at a maths exam, you can have a peep into the right answer, okay? Those people have sometimes access to the higher kingdom, but it was only a peep, a fast peep into the right answer. They did not have the time to truly transform their soul and their mind.
So they're not aligning their egoistic interests with a more higher understanding of form.
Exactly. I give you an example coming from the Republic by Plato. Okay, in the Republic by Plato, there is a person called Thrasymachus. Okay, Thrasymachos. Thrasymachus. Thrasymachus is the typical plutocratic man. Okay, he would say justice is the benefits of the powerful man. Okay, so the plutocratic man will not hesitate to say things in a straight manner. Okay, he say justice is what I decide because I'm powerful. Okay, mine is right. Okay, that is the motto of the plutocratic man, and he's not shy to say it straightforward. Okay, as Thrasymachus in the Republic, justice is the benefit of the powerful. That is his definition of justice. Because let's not forget that the Republic is a dialogue on justice, okay, on the city. And the fake democratic man will not say that justice is the benefit of the powerful man, even if he believes it, okay? He also believes that justice is the benefit or the advantage of the powerful man. But he will try to hide it under all kind of justifications or all kind of excuses. That's why the fake democratic man are very useful for the plutocratic man in manipulating the rest of the population by inventing all kind of justifications and all kind of excuses. For example, the climate change hoax, okay, for justifying the downgrading of the standard of living, for example, okay? if you have the direct not justification, but you have a direct speech of the plutocratic man, they simply would say, that's what I want, so that is justice. Okay, and he would not bother to give justification. But they have advisor who would say, no, 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 your lordship is too clumsy. You must use some excuses and some justification in order to manipulate the population. Is much better. You would not have to use direct violence.
But they lose their connection with the truth and beauty and goodness when they go down that road more and more, right?
Well, ultimately they would go to their doom, that's for sure. It would take a certain time, unhappily. Unfortunately, it would take a certain time, but ultimately they would go to their destruction and their death, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And they can't go further on up because they can't, whatever, comprehend it or don't want to comprehend it or whatever, or get stuck at number 3.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Exactly. And let's not forget that one of the major role of the plutocrats have been given to them by their advisor, the fake democratic man. And that famous rule, all of you know it, is divide and rule. Okay? If you divide the population into different oppositional groups, into opponents, you don't have to control them. That you would have, by opposing to each other, they would control themselves.
Chaotic.
So they're creating a simulacrum of reality. The psyche doctor.
Yes.
They're creating yeah.
Exactly. That is precisely the notion of narrative. Okay, the narrative is the superseding storytelling that would justify certain stuff. It doesn't mean that all narratives are wrong and evil, but you have good narrative, and those good narratives are called mythology. Okay, mythology are stories uplifting the mind and the soul of people to the level of beauty, goodness, and truth, precisely, versus narrative, which are not mythology, which are stories to justify certain policies. For example, I think the best is always the climate change hoax.
But Quan, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
How, when you talk about the plutocrat, how would you connect that or relate that with people who've suffered trauma and have developed power complexes in order to make up for the loss of self and ego that they're compensating for?
Oh, I understand your question. It's a very good question. I would say that the compensating psychological defense mechanism, which is called the ego in psychology, is not a problem if it is balanced. Okay, if that person who has an ego serving as a kind of armor to protect himself or herself from past trauma, and so that person would be capable to interact with general society in an easier manner and would not harm others, but simply to protect himself or herself in a balanced manner. It's part of a defense mechanism and it's part of natural psychology. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, and once again, I take the occasion because I have a psychological background as a professional. There's nothing wrong with the ego, because nowadays the ego is practically equal to the devil. The ego is only a psychological structure allowing you to interact with society. That's all. The important thing is that you are aware of the structure of your ego, because we don't have exactly the same ego, because we don't have exactly the same personal story, of course.
Could I try to put that slightly different way, Quan?
Yes, of course. Go ahead, Paul.
Just a very simple one. I mean, this is a curious question, but the idea of what you just described, ego. I mean, you get this a lot on Facebook posts, good advice, good advice, good advice, live your life this way. One of them that crops up a lot is you have to love yourself first before you can love anybody else. Now, would you equate that with the same thing as having a well-developed ego?
I would say yes, because good charity has to start by yourself, of course. Okay. And I think there's a philosophical principle that is outstanding for me. You cannot really give something if you're not already fulfilled to a certain extent.
There's a fine line with that, though, because often, somebody who has, and I'm, perhaps describing myself here, a well-developed ego can appear to a lot of people as being egotistical. Not intentionally, you're not intending to be, and you don't think you are, and a lot of people don't think you are, but certain people certainly do.
And that's
when they come across somebody who has a well-developed ego, if you like, in a good way, it can be very confronting.
Yes, and I would say that here the question is very subtle and the answer is not obvious, but it reminds me of some of my patients having fragile egos precisely, and they often will talk about their experiences with people having more balanced ego precisely. And often I would let them talk, and at the end, I would say something like, don't you think it's quite healthy to protect yourself first, as that person has protected herself or himself first? Don't you want to do that too for yourself? And most of the time, I have a good reaction when I had the good idea, of course, of letting him or her talk for half an hour before I say that.
I think that having a well-developed ego, even as a self-protective mechanism, has been an absolute must the last 3 years with everything we've been through.
Absolutely, because as long as you don't want to harm others and you are aware of the peculiarities of your own ego, I think it's part of the epistemological development and it's in the right direction.
And again,
it's good that you say that. It's good that you say that and emphasize balance in that also. Just because oh, never mind. Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, please.
Look, I'll finish it for you if you like. Balance over the last 3 years.
Okay, that'd be awesome.
Well, whether it's finishing it the way you wanted it to or not, but balance over the last 3 years has been an absolutely essential element of just day-to-day living. Because, I see the world, I think many of us see the world over the last 3 years as diabolical in a lot of ways. But trying to get others to see it, you can't force people to do that. And sometimes, no matter how confident you are that you're right, no matter how much information you can present to people showing that, my conclusions are reasonable conclusions, this is the evidence on which I'm working, you run the risk of confronting them in ways that they're just not ready for and will resent. And I mean resent in huge ways.
Yep.
It has been a difficult time for a lot of us, I mean, I'm talking specifically about the, the jabbed and the unjabbed particularly, and I'm unjabbed. But seeing the damage that's being done, even when you know that you could offer good advice, you sometimes still have to bite your tongue, hold your tongue, and just accept that you're really not going to do any good in this situation.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
And that's where you do need, a little bit of self-love or a healthy ego, so that you don't destroy yourself.
That's true.
You don't lose sight of what you believe. I mean, we're all individuals. Every one of us has an individual journey, and epistemological journey, as Quan is want to describe all the time. And no matter what realizations we might have of the world, let's say over the last 3 years and everything that preceded it, of course, so many people not only don't see that, they won't see it, they don't want to see it.
I had this really strange dream on Friday where it was just morning and I was just sort of lying there and I was listening to somebody say, Well, we actually did an audit in my dream. We actually did an audit on you, and we decided you were really evil. And we decided we thought we didn't have want to have anything to do with you. And I was just like, but you know what? In that moment, and it's not always true. My ego was, I don't know. I was helping. I just was okay. Well, that's what I don't know. I didn't think one way or the other because they're just saying the truth, and I didn't really. It didn't really crush me or nothing to hear that,
Yeah. Yeah.
It was just okay.
Yeah. It goes to that same idea of having a solid ego, though. Otherwise, you could be crushed.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right. Because I was later. I brood on it for like 4 days later. I thought, when you're tired and stuff comes up,
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, I think that your discussion is very interesting and give me the occasion to make a transition between 3 and 4 precisely. Okay, because we said that 3 is the psyche or the inchoate soul or the heart mind or the heart, and is precisely the place where is the ego can go awry or can be balanced. Okay, and when the ego is balanced, it will go to the higher degree of beauty, goodness, and truth. And when it will go awry, it will go precisely to the fake democratic man reality rather than the true democratic man reality, which is the man who is abiding in the true form of beauty corresponding to the step 4 of the epistemological development as explained by Plato and by Confucius precisely. And here we have a very big discussion that is possible because if you look 1, 2, 3 as part of doxa and 4, 5, 6 as part of episteme, okay, and episteme once again is beauty, goodness, and truth, or some certain people would call 4 the soul, 5 the cosmos, okay, and let's not forget that cosmos is harmony, and 6 as the self. And let's not forget that cosmos, once again, I think I repeat that often, but it's an important concept. Cosmos is not the physical universe, it's God's plan, okay, for the physical universe. But cosmos is also the inner cosmos, okay, the harmony of God's plan inside us, okay. When you say that we are in God's image, for example, well, that image is coming from the divine plan, okay, that is manifest when your epistemological development reach the stage 5, the stage of goodness or the stage of cosmos precisely. And I would like to have your interaction or your reactions about that.
Well, it has to be that way because we want to talk about the world of forms and then the world of emanations from the world of forms in what we consider to be the doxa reality. So there has to be a conflict between those things, right?
Right, absolutely. And here I want to introduce some etymology, okay? Metaphysics is a synonym of ontology, okay? So we all know that ontology is from Greek ontos, meaning about the being, okay? Being, ontos. Metaphysics means the same than ontology. Can you give me the etymology of metaphysics?
That would be, well, like music.
Well, yes, but it has to be more precise.
It would be beyond physics or ultra physics.
Absolutely, because meta means meta means after, okay, or beyond. I accept beyond. Okay, so meta means after, and physis is a Greek word meaning nature. Okay, so it means beyond nature. Okay, so what is beyond nature? Okay, once again, doxa is phenomenal reality. Okay, what we call nature. Okay, the natural phenomenon, phenomenal reality. And being, ontology, ontos, being, is something beyond nature, or using the Greek word metaphysis, after nature or beyond nature, which created the English word metaphysics, which is perfectly equal to ontology, since being is beyond nature. So you have phenomenal reality, doxa, nature, and absolute reality, episteme, beyond nature.
Principle.
Okay, principles. In one word, change and being. Okay, and change and being is at the root of what paradox?
The unified field theory. No.
No, I'm speaking of a Greek guy, because let's not forget that one of the goals of our discussion today is to make some summary or some discussion about basic notions of general philosophy. Okay, and when I'm speaking of ontology, metaphysics, it's about general philosophy.
Sorry.
So
you're talking about the ontological paradox?
Exactly. The ontological paradox has another name, Paul. And it's the name of a Greek guy living at the who is a little bit older than Plato.
Socrates.
Yes, you have one part of the answer. Socrates was a little bit older than Plato, but it's another guy who was a little bit older than Plato.
Pythagoras.
It's
Never
also
mind.
begins by it begins by P, but it's not Pythagoras. Okay, so it's the ontological paradox, or the paradox about being and becoming. Okay, if you want to speak in a simple manner, the ontological paradox is the dialectical dance between being and becoming. Okay, that's the simple way to talk. One of the name is, yes, Susan is writing that it reminds her of metanoia from the Bible. She's right, and I wouldn't come back to metanoia after. So the ontological paradox, I will give you the answer, is also called the Parmenides paradox.
Ah, okay.
Oh, I knew it. I was going to say that.
I believe you, Nathan. But this time you wouldn't remember forever.
I'm writing these down frantically, mate.
So I have this written down that I found. You had mentioned during the Theaetetus, says Quan mentioned intuition, and I found this on the internet, and it said Plato is the heir of the Parmenidean doctrinal tradition of being and cognition. According to him, intuition is the immediate perceiving of ideas. This may be supernatural intuition or rational intuition. Does that sound?
It is outstanding, Helen, because Parmenides gave. I think I said that when in one of the discussion of the Theaetetus, Parmenides gave the solution that is called the Platonic solution of the epistemological development, as expounded in chapter 7 of the Republic, or in the whole 10 chapters of the Republic, if you want the details. But the epistemological journey has been summarized in chapter 7 of the Republic. And that answer that Plato gave with all the possible details and political ramifications has been given first by Parmenides, but unhappily or unfortunately for him, he did not give a precise and detailed answers as Plato gave it in the Republic. So it is only fair that history and destiny gave the paternity of the solution to Plato, the guy who gave the best answer to the problem. Okay, from here, I would like to come back to the notion of metanoia that Susan just brought to us 2 minutes ago. And with metanoia, I would like you guys to explain for me the etymology of epistemology. Because in philosophy, you have 3 major words: ontology and metaphysics, who are synonymous, and the third one is epistemology.
Truth. Epista is related to the word truth? No. Maybe.
Not wrong, not wrong. Okay, because epistemology can be divided in episteme and logos. Okay, the speech on episteme.
Isn't it knowledge?
Yes, episteme mean knowledge. But why I said to Nathan that truth is not entirely wrong, because the three major forms, timeless forms of the first order in knowledge, which are the stages 4, 5, and 6, are beauty, goodness, and truth. So truth is not entirely wrong for episteme.
I have knowledge or understanding equals awareness.
Exactly. And when you say, yes, and when you say that, Helen, what dialogue by Plato does it remind you when you say that? Knowledge equal awareness. What dialogue by Plato does it remind you?
Well, it came from the Theaetetus, but
Yeah, Titus, yeah.
Yes, but there's another dialogue that we also read
I'd have to
together.
say the Phaedo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the difference between the Theaetetus and the Phaedo? Can you explain it to me?
Well, the Phaedo is well, I mean, he was talking about like what comes after, death, or how, like looking back on his life, and then in the I don't know. I can't put it into words.
Okay.
Can I put it into simple words and try? A justification for the belief in the existence of the soul.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. And do you remember the most powerful intellectual argument that Socrates gave for the existence of the soul from the Phaedo, Paul?
I'd have to consult my notes, mate.
Okay. Are your notes in your mind?
No, they're right in front of me. I'm writing frantically, mate. Everything you're saying, I'm desperately trying to write down. Meaning of words.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, you get insights, when you do that. This is why I love these discussions and your approach to it, okay? Because a lot of these things are concepts, ideas, things that all of us, or me anyway, have come across in the course of a private investigation, not a formal education in philosophy or whatever. But when you give the roots of words, the meaning of words, the original words, and this is not just something you do. There are plenty of people that do this, and you kind of get a flash of understanding. Oh, that's what it means, because you understand what it derives from. And
Yes.
Even though there might be variations, the idea of democracy, when you mentioned before, for example, that demos originally meant the mob rule. Well, these days, not these days, but you could certainly describe democracy as being that mob rule. Rule of the majority. Well, depending on how you want to look at that, that can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yes, exactly. It
Yeah,
depends on the quality.
If the majority of people in a democracy, and I would say this is something that you're seeing in the world at the moment, particularly in Russia, with what Putin has done to, to reinvigorate Russian culture, Russian society. He's a very popular leader. He has lifted his country up from potential destruction, the period of 91 to 2000 particularly, where they were being raped by the West, and has recreated Russian society in the image of what it was pre-Soviet days, etc., etc. Now, that is a positive example of democracy. And what I mean by that is Putin has a lot of personal popularity. For 20 years, he's had popularity ratings in excess of, 60% minimal and higher. You can't say that about any other leader in the world. And when you look at the obverse of that, when you look at what's going on, and I have to single out America, of course, because they're just the dominant one and the ones we see all the time. The kind of democracy that they're talking about, when I don't care who you name, Biden or anybody else, when they talk about, we want to bring democracy to the world, etc., they're talking about something entirely different.
Absolutely. It's the excuse of the fake democratic man serving the plutocratic masters.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
but having an understanding, having an understanding of the origin of the words, the original meaning of the words, gives you a better understanding or an insight into, you know, a lot of the discussions that we have, but also broader discussions, be it politics, be it, you know, whatever discussions. You know, when you have some insights into, which is why I'm writing frantically, when you know, tell me what episteme means, knowledge. Okay, yeah, right, now I understand that, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you know, it's fun to make those connections. As I say, you're not the only one who does this, but, you know, and I take note when other people do it too. But language having not been a part of my education, I wish to goodness that Latin, for example, had been taught at the school that I was at.
Yes.
Yeah, the ability to read, the ability to read some of the great works, even the ones that we're studying, for example, in the original language, and understanding it in the original language gives you a much greater sense of the context of the meaning. Two and a half thousand years later, you can still read it, and you know, you need some understanding of the context and the history of the culture and everything like that. But that gives you a better understanding, because if you're only viewing it through, you know, the interpretations of those words contemporarily, you're missing out on an awful lot, potentially missing out on an awful lot.
Yes, and I would like to say quickly that precisely.
Sorry to cut you off then, Helene, by the way.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
Helen, yes, do you want to say something before I begin my speech?
Okay, so before you give your speech, okay, so in the Phaedo, you were talking about what the primary, what did you ask, Paul? What the primary reason for the soul?
The most powerful argument in favor of the existence of the soul.
Okay, so I'm gonna just take a stab at it. I don't know if it's right or not, because I wrote so many notes and I know that he was going back and forth. And okay, so anyway, I'm gonna say that the one state of being cannot exist without the opposite state of being first. Yes, no?
I would say that you have the core of the answer. In
oh,
the
you're
word,
just kind.
Yes, no, that's true, and you will see why. The most powerful argument for the existence of the soul is precisely the existence of the opposite realities. Okay, one of the two realities is the phenomenal body. Okay, you go through all your bodily experiences, but if you are someone paying attention through all your bodily experiences, there is something that is always unwaveringly present and unwaveringly unchanged, and that is knowledge in the sense of awareness. Okay, yeah. You can be happy, but you still have awareness of your happiness. You can be unhappy, but you have awareness of your unhappiness. You have a pain in your shoulder. You are aware of your pain in your shoulder. You are hungry. You are aware that you have a bodily experience of hunger, not of anger. I'm sorry. So through all these phenomenal reality of your bodily experiences, there is an unchanging flame that is called by Plato in Greek episteme, or awareness. Because you understand that when we equate episteme with knowledge, it's not knowledge in the sense of information. It's knowledge in the sense of awareness, with a capital K, if you want.
Okay, so what I said was just one reason or one example that he gave of why it might be true that you're saying.
Yes, that is the timeless, the everlasting opposing presence of that flame of awareness through all the phenomenal realities that your body will give you.
Yeah.
Okay, and that is the only thing that is unchanged. Either you're hungry or filled, either you're happy or unhappy, either you're joyful or angry. There's something that doesn't change and is always the same. Epistemic.
Okay.
And the epistemological development in terms of a spiritual language, precisely, is to be more and more rooted in that awareness reality in all circumstances of life. Because we as human beings, we dance between absolute reality and phenomenal dimension, okay? Or doxa, episteme, or lower trigram and upper trigram, okay? So the infinite epistemological journey is precisely not rejecting the lower trigram, but integrating the lower trigram, but abiding in the upper trigram when leaving the lower trigram, okay? We can talk about the infinite epistemological journey in terms of philosophy, and that's when I use the Platonic or the Confucianist way of talking. But we can talk it in terms of spirituality, okay? And in terms of spirituality is to abide in awareness in all circumstances of your life, but another way to say the same thing than Plato and Confucius. But Plato and Confucius being also people having talents in making their ideas clear and their concept clear, they have written books and books on the same stuff, which are more detailed than simply to say to abide in awareness in all circumstances of your life. But I want you to understand that it's equivalent.
Yes, Quan, I have a question.
Yeah.
In listening throughout the lecture, I'm continually reminded, particularly in your reference to the higher domains of epistemological journey of beauty, goodness, and truth. And I'm reminded of, in that regard, of John Keats's poem on Ode to a Grecian Urn.
Yeah.
And his last line on that is, beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. So my question is, and what I'm getting in alignment with, is this idea of knowing relates to your idea of goodness.
Absolutely. Because that knowing in, maybe I wouldn't answer a little bit technical. I am sorry for that, because I should avoid technique when speaking of poetry, but it's poetry too, okay? Because goodness is another face of beauty, and beauty is another face of goodness, and truth is another face of beauty and goodness, okay? Even if there's a kind of hierarchy between the three, because truth is at the top, goodness is at the middle, and beauty is at the lowest place of the divine kingdom. But in reality, we should not see them as separate, okay? I see them as inside the same circle, okay? The circle representing the perfection of the higher kingdom. And but I would say, why the philosopher and the sages put beauty at the lowest level? I think it's because for us human, it's easier to reach to beauty than to truth directly.
Well,
so
and Quan
yes,
also, may I please interrupt? I just wanted to real quick. So also there's confusion about beauty in the doxa,
yeah,
thinking that it exists within it.
yes, exactly. I thank you for that remark, because it's precisely the fake democratic man, okay? Because those people have access to beauty from time to time. That is why they are so impressive, okay? Because let's be honest, okay? Most people would be impressed by Henry Kissinger. Most people would be impressed by Bertrand Russell. Most people would be impressed by Zbigniew Brzezinski, okay? Let's be honest. Why? Because they had access sometimes to that higher kingdom. It gave to them a kind of higher energy, but not good enough to be a true democratic man.
That's good.
Just a quick one, Quan. The idea of beauty as being on the lower of the three forms there, would that be because beauty for us anyway is approachable mostly through perceptual awareness?
That's my understanding too, Paul. Okay,
Yeah,
I think that
whereas you know, and correct me if I'm wrong here. Whereas I don't want to say knowledge and wisdom, but you know, lump them together for the moment. Can be, I don't want to say better approached, but meditation is a journey into those realms. And whilst there is a perceptual awareness, you know, when you're meditating, most of the time your eyes are closed, so it's an internal perception, if you like, awareness. It's not based on the phenomenological world around you that you mentioned before. Would you regard that as being the defining thing between, you know, beauty as the lower of the three forms that you talk about?
yes,
That precisely because it is susceptible, shall we say, to the phenomenological experience. What's the word I'm looking for there? No, we started off this lecture. You were talking about it right at the beginning. It begins with E, and the word won't come to mind, and I haven't written it down.
okay,
Anyway, but the idea that separating oneself from the external world, the world of phenomena, etc., and going inward, where really you're processing everything that you've ever learned about the phenomenal world when you're meditating anyway. You can't escape that. It's not like you're separating yourself entirely from the external world at all, but you're doing it, dare I say, on a higher level. I wrote something here a while back. Let's see if I can put my glasses on and see what I find. Okay, this is when we were doing Phaedo. The soul is free from certain sensory inputs. And my note was, seems like a tribute to meditation as the only true methodology of reasoning.
yes. It's very interesting because precisely it gives me the occasion to goes back to the Gestalt psychology. Okay, because true knowledge is not only the reception of the quantity from the senses perception, but it's precisely the autonomy of the soul capable to give forth the timeless forms that would structure knowledge precisely, being its own citadel of awareness and of the timeless form, structuring reality. And that is exactly what you're talking about when you are talking about the soul and the awareness in its own reality, if I remember the words.
Structure
But
reminds
if
Kepler.
Yes, but let's not forget that all those guys are in the same tradition. Eh?
It appears to me that there might be some relationship with the tradition, with the perception of God, of the triunal nature of God as being love, truth, and life. I mean, love maybe being agape or the knowledge of God, and truth, and life perhaps being beauty. Would there seem to be a equation to that?
Absolutely, because agape or love is the state of the aristocratic man, the man at cosmos, okay, the man reaching to the plans, the God's plan. And that is the triune reality, if you want, of the three timeless forms of the first order, okay? Beauty, goodness, and truth, or if you prefer, beauty, love, and truth.
Yeah.
Because the aristocratic man, and here I would like to take 5 minutes to go back to because I want to finish the epistemological journey according to Plato. So 1, the democratic man, sense of perception. 2, the plutocratic man, the intellect. 3, the fake democratic man, the psyche or the inchoate soul. 4, beauty or the true democratic man, motivated by true justice and true honor. 5, the aristocratic man, in the etymologic meaning of the word, the best, okay? The best, not in the sense of the best in the society or the best class in the society, but the best meaning the man embodying the best of the soul, okay? Meaning beauty, goodness, and truth, okay? And The Greek word for that is dialektikon, meaning playful exploration. But the Christian word for that is agape, okay, which is divine love. But divine love for understanding the universe, the divine love for others, the divine love for the creation, because the aristocratic man is the man at the level exploring God's plan. Okay, and in that sense, he is in God's image. He is participating to God's plan.
Interesting there, Quan, because I always understood agape to be self-love.
Yes.
Of the highest order, Your explanation of it is a little bit broader than that, but you know, yeah.
Yes, but if you truly love yourself, you would love what is the highest in you.
Yeah.
Or you would know what is you, okay? Because if you don't know yourself, you might love something which is at a lower order of yourself, and it's still love, self-love, but it's not self-love with full understanding.
It's narcissism. Yes. Yeah.
And the epistemological journey is precisely for understanding. And I want to come back to Susan's word metanoia, okay, before I forget, because metanoia is linked with epistemology. Metanoia is a Greek word meaning a conversion, okay, but conversion, see it physically. Conversion meaning turning at 180 degrees, okay, or turning from the lower trigram and turning 180 degrees to the upper trigram. Okay, so I do it here. So I'll just the lower trigram, you turn 180 degrees. So you go up to the upper trigram. Okay, that is the true meaning of metanoia, conversion. Okay.
Isn't that 90?
Could you spell that word, please, Quan?
Yes, metanoia, meta, M-E-T-A, meta after, noia, N-O-I-A, metanoia, and it's a Greek word meaning conversion. But conversion, once again, I do it with my pen. You turn 180 degrees from the lower trigram to the upper trigram. Okay, conversion is not conversion in the ordinary meaning of the word that a Christian would convert to Islam or a Muslim would convert to Christianity. Okay, it's not that kind of conversion that I'm speaking about. Okay, I'm speaking of the true inner conversion when you go from the lower trigram or from doxa and you make a 180 degree to the upper trigram or to episteme. Okay, when you go from sense of perception, intellect, and psyche to beauty, goodness, and truth, or to dianoia, dialektikon, and theoria using Plato's words.
I will say, when you, Helen, when you said 90 degrees, but I think if we think of it in terms of a hyperboloid, where you have a convergence from the upper and the lower, that would make it 90. So if you have a hyperboloid or a toroid, and then you inverted it to the principal convergence. Yeah. Okay. That's just what I wanted to say, because I thought that would explain what 90, 180, because of the hyperbole.
Exactly. The idea is that you go from becoming and you go to being. Okay. So it's in English, we in ordinary language, we say he had a 180 degree turn. Okay. Meaning he changed completely. Okay. So metanoia is a fancy word meaning that there is a complete change in the order of values.
It reminds me of the song Amazing Grace and the slave trader who wrote that, and he suddenly had an epiphany and saw how terrible his behavior had been, and he felt amazing grace that he was able to be forgiven and to forgive himself, and felt just full of light for
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, is the same. So the aristocratic man, motivated by playful exploration, so his form of light, and making him capable of discovery, of inventivity, and of creativity. Okay, and at that moment, that person is at God's image, or is participating to God's plan. Okay, exploring the universe and participating at his level to creativity. And in an ideal world, only true democratic man and aristocratic man can be rulers in an ideal world. And of course, we don't have an ideal world for now.
We're trying to build one, Quan. We're trying to build one.
Yes, yes, I think that is a very good answer, Paul. We are trying.
Yeah, baby steps perhaps, but yeah, we are collectively.
So, as you read in the invitation, I talk a lot about etymology because I want the people here to be comfortable with the philobabble. Okay,
well,
so
I've expanded my philobabble today, thanks to you. I've got lots of definitions here, which is really good.
Yeah, and I would like to remind them rapidly the ontological paradox or Parmenides paradox, or to speak simply, becoming and being. Okay. And when we speak about being, is ontology from Greek ontos, being, logos, the speech on being, or metaphysics, metaphysis, beyond nature. Okay, nature being the doxa or lower trigram of phenomenal reality, and being the knowledge or episteme. Okay, knowledge with a capital K, or the awareness. And once again, the most powerful argument in the Phaedo for the reality of the soul is that there's always that flame of awareness present in all our bodily phenomenal experiences. That is the only unwavering, unchanged reality in our life, from our birth to our death. And beyond death, for people courageous enough to see beyond death.
Well, I'm 70, mate. I'm looking there, that's for sure.
Yes.
And look, there's a lot to look at even in that area. I mean, you know, the word reincarnation, I suppose, comes up into that conversation, and I'm seeing.
Oh,
it's funny the way these things pop up just when you need them. You know, like I'm finding a lot of discussions on ideas of reincarnation. Some of them are good, some of them are terrible. One of the latest ones has to do with physics, in fact, that there might be a physics explanation for it, which is pretty weird, but I'll follow it through.
yeah.
It has to do with ideas of resonance.
Well, resonance.
Kepler is also physics, isn't he?
What did you say, Nathan? I'm sorry.
Oh, Kepler in the Kepler discussion, we were getting into the circle and the physics of also.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes, absolutely.
And we did some in the Phaedo as well.
Yes. Well, in the Kepler, what is interesting that from chapter 1 and 2 of his book 4 of the Harmonice Mundi, the harmonies of the world, he was introducing the ideas of sensible things, okay, would be compared by the soul through harmonic proportions, okay, and also immaterial thing, and the expression that I love so much, in a non-localized mode, okay, immaterial things from a non-localized mode, okay, meaning for him, it's pure object of the mind, okay, and non-material thing or immaterial things in a non-localized mode is Kepler's own words for the timeless forms of the first order. okay, that Plato called beauty, goodness, and truth. And the play between the circle and the segment of circles and the segments that would, the lines that would intersect, would make the center of the soul that he calls the mind move in circular motion, and those circular motions would are what we call reason, okay, the mind in actions that would make certain things that we can discover, which is the path of knowability or of epistemological journey. Okay, so you see that Kepler is a Platonist. He has his own favorite words, of course, but the dialectical dance between becoming and being is still there, okay, with different words.
Can you explain just one more time? You said immaterial things, the logos. Well, but immaterial in the, how does that relate again to the world of becoming? I'm sorry.
Becoming and being. But
Okay.
And becoming is the sensible things, and being is precisely the expression that I love from Kepler.
Okay, you got okay.
The immaterial, non-localized things. Okay, he used things as a general words, of course, because in ordinary language, things is associated with objects, of course. But for him, for Kepler, immaterial, non-localized things. What I love is non-localized. Okay, in the 16th century, he already used that expression that we use in physics and quantum physics nowadays. Okay, non-localized. So immaterial, non-localized things, which pertains to the reality of being. Okay, so that's chapter 1 and 2 of book 4 of Harmonices Mundi. Okay, he starts with comparing with the soul, the representation that is put into the soul coming from the emanations from two sensible things, if you remember. And after in chapter 2, he will talk about the immaterial, non-localized things, and he will take examples not of the first order, because there are only 3 timeless forms of the first order, and they are beauty, goodness, and truth. But he will talk about, I would say, timeless form of the second order, meaning the idea of the circle and the idea of the segment of the circles and the idea of the line. Okay, segment of the circles and the lines in my mind, it's the same for him. So you have 2 pure timeless form, the circle in the mind, and the segment of the circles are lines, and the interaction of the two that would create the different polygons or polyhedra or stuff that would bring us to the journey of knowability or epistemological journey, to use Platonic words rather than Keplerian words. Okay,
we must be getting somewhere, Quan, because that what you just said makes perfect sense now.
That's why that I am absolutely delighted that we have 2 sessions of 2 hours, so that we can clean up a little bit that philo babble.
Yeah, clarify it all. Yeah, it's very useful, which is why I was looking forward to this lecture.
And we still have 15 minutes. I would like to, if you guys have stuff that you want to discuss, I wouldn't favor that, but I would like maybe to discuss the fact that nowadays the Plutocrats would prevent the soaring to the higher domains of beauty, goodness, and truth precisely by limiting the human being to the inferior part of the soul, even making people believe wrongly that those higher domains simply don't exist. Do you want to discuss about that?
Sure. I think they don't think they exist. I don't think they think they exist. I think that they, well, this is silly, but you know, they go 90 degrees. Like if you look at a UFO or something, it turns 90. They're just looking at the plane of reality. They're not doing the 180 to the
That's interesting what you say, Nathan. So for you, of course, I agree with that, because if they are truly in truth, goodness, and beauty, they would not be like they are. Okay,
right.
It's as simple as that.
I had that experience when I first came across Yuval Harari. My son actually bought me one of his books as a birthday present, and I couldn't read it. I couldn't get through it. I just found, you know, without knowing why, and I think the book is Homo Deus. Without knowing why, it's almost like every second page offended me, but I couldn't work out why. What, you know, a lot of what he was writing seemed reasonable enough and everything like that, but there was this intuitive feeling, strong intuitive feeling that this guy coming from a position that truly offends my nature. And then, you know, when you see him in some of his presentations, particularly, you know, humans are hackable and everything to do with the spiritual side of life is now dead and gone and buried, never to come back, etc., etc., etc. You put your finger on it straight away. You know, you suddenly realize this guy is just inhuman. He has no humanity as we would know it after our discussions of the last 3 or 4 months. He has none of that whatsoever and seems totally incapable of contemplating any of it, even though supposedly he meditates.
Well, can we consider him number 3 through and through? Not that I'm not a lot of 3 too, but can we just say that he's in the realm of psyche, that he's not a plutocrat, that he does understand some limited harmonic?
I don't even think you can put him to 3.
Yeah, I would go further.
I'll go with you.
It's not just that he's at level 3. To me, it's that he is incapable of going any further. And he represents the WEF, the whole lot, that materialist philosophy that has been developing for 400 years or whatever. He is a strong representative of where that line of thinking takes you.
And if he's defending you all, there's no way he could be 3, because 3 would be not being so forthcoming.
Yeah,
no, you can't say that.
Yeah, I mean, offending me. I mean, you know, I'm not going to go and shoot him or anything like that. He doesn't offend me to that degree.
I know what you're saying.
What I'm saying was that you know, this is somebody I knew nothing about when I started reading the book, but you know, almost from page 1, there was just this intuitive feeling that what I was reading was somehow offensive to my nature. Now, you know, there are plenty of times where I might read a political book and disagree with somebody, for example, on, you know, the basis of the ideas presented, the arguments presented, etc., etc., etc. I mean, you know, follow Matthew's political work on so many people, you know, Adam Smith, etc., etc. You know, you can find a lot of reasons not to like that or to disagree with it, but it's not offensive as such. You understand what these people were doing when they were writing it. They believe what they were writing too. That's not offensive to me. I disagree with it, but it's not offensive to me. But it was, you know, just one of those times where reading that book, and I got about halfway through it before I just put it down and thought, no, that's damaging me. It's so conflicting. I just cannot do it. And this was before I knew who he was and saw him, as I said, in some of the presentations that you see online with his speech about hackable humans, etc., etc. That was when it crystallized. Oh, that's why he offends me. And the more I watched, the more I listened, you know, the more I thought, this is a person who epitomizes a life that is devoid of anything to do with spiritual concerns whatsoever. I mean, he freely admits it. You know, that stuff's all gone. We don't need that anymore. We're going to create new human beings. We are going to be God.
Yes, yes. And I think that you were very intuitive, Paul, when you were so offended when he was talking of the hackable humans, okay?
Oh.
It's such a lack of respect to his fellow human beings. And Helen is right, okay? He's not really 3, because if he's 3, he would have more capacity to seduce you, to present things in a nice manner, okay? And here he's like Thrasymachus, okay, the guy in the Republic saying that justice is the advantage of the powerful.
That's exactly what he's saying. You betcha. Yeah. We get to play God. Who's the we in this equation, Yuval? Yeah. Define the we. Tell me who you are, and preferably give me the names and addresses so I can go and pay them a visit.
Yes, exactly.
I'll be right there with you.
I would like to give 2 examples of 3, and they are much more dangerous than the people at 2, because the people at 2 are so in your face that they cannot really manipulate you, okay? But the people at 3, they are much more subtle, refined, and sophisticated, and they can manipulate you. And
Yeah.
according to my understanding, 2 examples of 3 are Jeffrey Sachs and Sir Roger Scruton. Okay, if you never heard Jeffrey Sachs, if you never heard Sir Roger Scruton, Scruton, go on the internet and watch 1 or 2 videos by them. And even Scruton, in my mind, is very close to 4. So if I may be so bold than to label them, okay. But if you want to have an idea what are truly dangerous people, watch Sir Roger Scruton and Jeffrey Sachs.
Yep. I've seen enough of Jeffrey Sachs to know.
Okay, because 2, they are not dangerous. Okay, they are so vulgar and in your face that you identify them at once. But the 3, they are very dangerous, but because they can seduce you.
Is it a quality of 3 that they're always tied to their, that they do? Not are all 3 dangerous? I mean,
No.
it's just a level of development.
Yes,
No,
exactly.
it can't be that. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's interesting because it reminds me of an image from the Republic. If you read the Republic, I think it's in chapter 7 too. You have a metaphor. Okay, you have the Plutocrats on the platform playing with puppets. Okay, and projecting the shadows on the wall. And you have newly free people who will climb up the platform, and some of them would be seduced by the Plutocrats to assist them in manipulating the puppets, and some would simply ignore them and go their way. Okay, so you're right. Not all 3 would be participating to the games of the Plutocrats. But what is truly common to all 3, if I may say so, is that they are sophisticated, they are refined, they have emotional intelligence, and most human beings, they love people having emotional intelligence. If you listen to Jeffrey Sachs, he's really cute to listen to if you're not aware of who he is. Okay, and you know, on the Chinese TV, the CGTN, China Global TV Network, Jeffrey Sachs is often invited because his speeches are so cute that the Chinese population absolutely love him. Okay, but thanks God, the Chinese rulers know who he is. Okay,
Yeah,
but
good.
that's okay. They still invite Sachs because his speeches are so cute that it's simply it's a kind of lullaby for the average Chinese citizen, a little bit naive and not aware of who Jeffrey Sachs truly is.
Here's a question, Quan, that you know, this is completely unrelated actually to today's, well, it's related but unrelated. China has undergone massive reconstruction in the last 30 years and are churning out more engineers and scientists and practical scientific people on a daily basis compared to the rest of the world. Along the way, is the education system in China still geared towards Confucian principles? Do these engineers and everybody graduating at these levels come out of their education with a, dare I say it, you know, with at least 1 foot on the epistemological journey as we're describing it?
Well, the epistemological journey is given at the primary school and high school.
Okay,
And
okay, yeah, good,
so
good. Yeah.
when you reach to the college level, you already have that epistemological journey started when you were 5 or 6.
No wonder I keep meeting so many intelligent Chinese people here in Manila.
Yeah, and because, as you know, Paul, you have to distinguish between education, which is bringing forth what is from within the soul, okay, and that bringing forth what is within from the soul, educare, has to be started as young as possible, meaning at 3-4 years old, okay, from the time that the child is beginning to speak, most of the time 2 years old, okay, and and public instruction. Okay, when you go to a medical school, when you go to engineering school, when you go to architecture school, it's not for your education, it's for your instruction in a profession. It's not the same.
Yeah, training.
It's for your
training rather
training.
than yeah.
Absolutely.
Very
Professional.
noticeable. Very noticeable in my lifetime, because you know, at 70, I can confidently say that the education system that I was lucky enough to participate in Australia, primary education, and even up to the level of secondary education, was still rooted in what you just called educare.
Yeah.
Teaching you to think, not necessarily in a Platonic sense or a, you know, Confucian sense or a Socratic sense or anything like that. We didn't discuss philosophy, but nonetheless, it wasn't simply training per se. Now, as somebody who worked for 40 years within the education system in the area of music, I saw that being transformed. It's why I retired early at 60. I was either retire or go completely crazy, not just crazy, but put myself completely at odds with all of the music faculties around me who were being forced to do it. Most of the people, you know, kind of agreed with my arguments, if you like, but because it was being dictated on high, we had to do this. We had to give, in our assessments, for example, of music performance, we had to give what I would consider to be quantitative assessments as opposed to qualitative assessments. And that offended the fuck out of me.
Yes, absolutely. Quality over quantity. Yes.
Oh yeah, you know, that's what it became, and you would reward somebody for their quantitative input rather than any qualitative input.
Yeah, that's wow. We all conspiracy theorists here.
This was
part of the dumbing down program.
Yeah, it was all being driven, you know, and we were getting lectured by these people who were trained in, you know, the latest in American educational theory, and that offended me even more. I mean, I wanted to put my hand up at all of these, you know, teacher meetings saying, why on earth are we listening to this guy? Take a look at America, folks. You know, do we want to go down that path? Anyway, I won't rant on about that.
On that excellent
conclusion. Thank you for the rant.
On that excellent conclusion, I would finish our discussion today, unless there's something absolutely vital that someone wants to say before going.
Well, I've got a question, and it relates to, I know China is very rich in their tradition of symbology as it relates to epistemology and symbols, but I had an experience this week. I was wondering if the same occurred in Greece. I had an experience this week where I was researching the symbol of the double-headed eagle, which is the new heraldry, more or less, for Russia. It started with Alexander II. And at the center of this emblem, of course, it has St. George, who was a Roman who was beheaded because he wouldn't give up his Christianity. But more importantly, when I was looking at the symbol of the double-headed eagle, presumably it went back to ancient Greece and the Byzantine Empire.
I think it goes back to Babylon. I think you'll find examples of it in Babylon.
Okay. And in any case, in one interpretation, the two-headed eagle, one was looking to the east and one was looking to the west. But in the other representation I read, it talked about looking at the physical world and the metaphysical world. And of course, the symbol of the wings of the eagle somewhat reminded me of a symbol of maybe of the phoenix or something like that. But was there a tradition in Greece, as there is a rich history in China, like with the Grecian urn, of this symbology represented in imagery? I mean, before words and geometry and things like that. Could you address that?
Oh, absolutely. Because for me, all symbols have to be interpreted as the reflection of the epistemological journey first and foremost. Okay, it can have more practical interpretations, as you said. For example, the double eagle symbol of Russia. Okay, one head to the west and one head to the east. It's perfectly legit, of course, but I would much more favor the epistemological interpretation, because until proven otherwise, all symbology is related to ontology, metaphysics, and epistemology and metanoia until proven otherwise, at least for me.
Yeah.
And if you want to follow that one through a little bit further, not that I've read a lot of his works, but I've read a lot of people's discussions of his works. Schwaller Lubitz is a good guy to look at from that point of view, especially you can probably find some free downloads online too, when he talks about hieroglyphics.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, he was writing at a time when, you know, hieroglyphics had only relatively recently, you know, with the Napoleonic expedition to Giza, the supposed discovery of the Rosetta Stone and the translation of hieroglyphics that followed thereafter. And Schwaller de Lubitz, he's not the only one, but I think he writes so well that it's relatively easy to follow him. It's not easy, I have to say. It'd be easier after our discussion this week and next week, perhaps, because it's full of philo language, as you call it. But in talking about hieroglyphics and that symbolic language, he's saying that you really have to have more than one interpretation in your mind when you're looking at it. You know, there is a surface meaning for what hieroglyphics might be, and we focus too much on that, but there is at least potentially a deeper hidden meaning that will only be available to somebody who has an understanding of that potential.
Yes, exactly. And I don't want to be too mechanical, okay? And don't take what I would say at the first level. But since there are 6 stages of epistemological development according to Plato and Confucius, I would say that there are at least 6 levels of interpretation for each symbol. But don't take it too mechanically, of course.
Yeah, you can't, otherwise you'll be forever confused.
Exactly. Okay, thanks everyone, and thanks Susan for the technical help. And I will send the video in the Kepler Telegram group now, and see you guys in a week. Ciao.
Okay, before you go, Quan, I just
Yes.
want to say thanks for doing this lecture. It's everything that I hoped it would be, and I look forward to next week as well.
Thank you very much, Paul. See you soon.
Thank you.